That streaming just started.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second pre-inquiry re-examination meeting for the extensions at Limekiln wind farm. For anyone who didn't participate the last time, my name's Lorna McCallum, and I'm joined virtually by Dan Jackman. We're the reporters who've been appointed by Scottish ministers to examine this Section 36 application. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we start. If anyone does have anyone else in the room with them, if they could just maintain social distancing, please. Could you make sure that your phones are off or on silent? And the meeting has been live streamed, as Callum says. It will be stored and will remain on view on the DPE webcasting site. Just before we commence, can everyone hear okay? Yep, okay. And just so that the quality of both the recording and the audio remains good, could I just ask that, unless you're speaking, if you would put your mics on mute, please? And any observers to keep their mics and videos off if they don't want to speak. If anyone has any questions at any point or wishes to interject, please raise your hand. If I do miss you, I apologise. It's sometimes quite hard to see everyone on a small screen, but I will do my best to try and catch everyone. And if I don't, either keep your hand up or I will make sure that I come back to people at regular points to check. Okay, and the purpose of today's meeting is to finalise the procedural arrangements for the oral sessions. There'll be no discussions as usual on the merits of the case. Does everyone have a copy of the agenda available? Yeah, for anyone who's watching and doesn't have a copy before them, it's available on the DPA website under the application reference number. Okay, now today we have Mr. Trinick for the applicants in Finergy Limited, Mr. Finlay for the council, and we're joined by Mr. Campbell. Okay, so does anyone want to make any further introductions before I go on?
Just to say that on my screen, Mr. Campbell is not appearing, and there's a suggestion, he's just appeared, there was a suggestion he may have had bandwidth problems. So I don't know whether he heard your introduction, but I see him now, so he can no doubt tell us himself.
Mr. Campbell, are you hearing okay?
Every word, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, right, so no one wants to make any further introductions. So as you parties will have seen from the recent correspondence, we've been joined by Mr. Campbell at the request of West Caithness Community Council. We'll discuss the details of that in a minute, but firstly just want to mention that Mr. Kelly isn't here today. He's not participating on behalf of the Ray Area Wind Farm Opposition Group, who have withdrawn from the inquiry process as an active participant at this stage. Okay, so if we move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is progress to date. We've had, as you'll know, a formal request from the Community Council to participate in this meeting, and we'll deal with that matter first. Could I perhaps just ask Mr. Campbell to explain to us that, you know, what the position exactly is at this moment in time?
Ma'am, thank you and good afternoon. I'm John Campbell. I'm a Queen's Counsel at the Scottish Bar. I'm instructed by the Caithness West Community Council to make an application to you to join the process. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Initially, I think the local people were represented by an action group and the Community Council, and they sort of merged, but it was never clear quite who was doing what. Of late, Mr. Kelly, who represented the action group, has withdrawn for reasons which he set out in correspondence. And I've been approached by the action group to represent it. Sorry, I've been approached by the Community Council to represent it in a limited respect in the remaining part of the inquiry. So my first application to you is to allow that to happen.
Okay.
When the opt-in letters were sent out, the chairman of the Community Council received 2 from Colin Bell. She assumed wrongly that they were both, that one was for Drumholliston and one was for Limekiln 1, and filled them both in. It turns out that by mistake they were both for Drumholliston, which is why the Community Council's opting in process is perceived to have been deficient. I have to acknowledge that it was deficient, and the Community Council has never formally opted into the process until now. If the application is granted this afternoon for the Community Council to participate, then I anticipate that it will wish to take part only in the landscape and visual inquiry session, which is in Annex 1, probably on the second day, and in the policy hearing, which is on the third day of the inquiry.
Okay, and no other sessions and no other aspects of the process?
That's not so far as I'm instructed. I don't expect any other instructions in relation to other subject headings.
Okay. And they feel that they need to actively participate rather than submit a statement as per the action group?
Well, the Community Council and the Action Group are not quite in agreement about how that should be approached. It's certainly possible that they could submit a written submission. They have quite a lot to say about landscape and visual impact, given the proximity of this proposed development to the village of Ray and also to residences. So far as policy is concerned, what is desired is to advance a local view of policy, obviously coming behind Mr. Hinson, and also to ask questions of, through you, of course, Mr. Bell or Mr. Bell at the hearing session on policy.
Okay.
I'm not expecting a lengthy participation by the Community Council.
Okay. Could I just clarify? You indicated that you probably propose only one witness for each section on behalf of the Community Council. That's correct. Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
I'm not proposing to call any experts because, well, I'm not proposing to call any experts.
Okay. And do the Community Council understand that they would be bound by the same requirements as everyone else who's participating in the process? You know, they would have to submit inquiry statements, precognitions, etc., in the normal fashion.
Absolutely. Well, they do now.
Okay, just for the for the benefit of other people who are listening who perhaps not so familiar with the process, there is, as set out in the agenda, a list of submissions that are required and a set of dates by which they have to be with us and other parties, so that there is full and comprehensive disclosure of parties' cases before we reach to the inquiry stage. So anyone
That's fully understood, ma'am. I see from the schedule, well, you'll come to paragraph 5 of your agenda, but obviously inquiry statements were due on Monday this week, and that's now gone past. So
yeah,
I'm going to ask you in a little while for some time to do that.
We'll come to timeframes later on, but we will discuss a bit of flexibility in relation to that part. Just wanted to make it clear for anyone who's perhaps participating in the background, anyone from the Community Council who's listening in, that these are quite onerous requirements. As long as they're happy to participate in that respect, then we'll open it up to other parties now just to seek their views. Okay, could I turn firstly to Mr. Trinick? Could you give us your feelings on the proposal, please?
Yes, I think we made clear in our email, or the Evershed's email of 14 April, that we strongly welcomed public participation in this inquiry. We're disappointed to see the attitude taken by RAWOG. We wanted to see them there. We wanted you to hear local views. Our position has been explicit and strong throughout. And therefore, we welcome Caithness West Community Council's participation in the inquiry, represented by Mr. Campbell. And whatever sessions they want to take part in, even if some are subsequently announced, it doesn't worry us. We think it's important that their voice is heard. And that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Trinick. Mr. Finlay, do the council have any feelings on that matter?
Generally supporting what Mr. Trinick has just said.
We wouldn't normally at this stage introduce a new party to the proceedings, but we can understand what has happened in that another party who had been representing the community has withdrawn. So I think in this instance, given that the other parties have no opposition, then we will agree to the Community Council taking part in the inquiry on the basis that it's the two sessions that you have indicated, and will adhere to the submissions and the timeframe requirements.
Ma'am, thank you very much. I'm much obliged to both of Malone and Friends for their enthusiastic endorsement. And just repeat that I completely understand the importance of time limits, subject to what I might have to say under item 5.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, moving on under item 2, we have some additional information now received on what we're referring to as Limekiln 2A. That was received on the 16th of March, and that information was simply to assist in our understanding of the landscape and visual impacts. We are making no assessment of that proposal. Our assessment is subject to the application before us. And as parties have already noted, the statement of agreed matters on landscape and visual assessment was due on the 6th of April. Sorry, due on the 19th of April. We will discuss when we get to item 5 what a suitable timeframe would be for submitting that. Okay, and let's see. Further written submissions on ornithology. We now have the comments from Nature Scott to our questions, and we have received the applicant's initial response and the RSPB's comments of the 19th of April. The applicants now have until the 3rd of May to respond on ornithology. Moving on to item 3, if no one else has any comments on that. Circulated with the agenda was a link to our current COVID-19 DPA guidance, and parties will probably see that, unfortunately, although we did give consideration to how we might be able to run an in-person inquiry, it is not going to be possible. Our instructions at this stage are to proceed on the basis of a virtual inquiry. Does anyone have any comments on that? Mr. Trent?
I'm not sure there's much we can do at the moment. The guidance says what it says, and I'm not going to argue against it. However, things are, thankfully, positively happening in fairly short order at the moment. And it may be that by the time we get to a certain date before the inquiry, that things may have changed. I don't know. I'm second guessing. But since it's certainly my strong preference to hold a physical inquiry, if at all possible, I just wonder if it might not be possible to hold open this issue for as long as possible to enable a final decision to be made. And in the meantime, suggest, if that's accepted, that some investigation is made about the availability of the venues, which I think Kirsty Smith at Eversheds has previously drawn to your attention as possible inquiry venues. I'll leave my question there and see what others think.
Mr. Finlay, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, again, I can be brief. I agree with Mr. Trenick.
It's a very fluid situation, so it's difficult to plan too far ahead. But what we did try to consider whether or not venues had the capacity and the ability to undertake a COVID compliant inquiry in person, but it is there are huge amounts of work have to go on behind the scenes to verify that and undertake the appropriate risk assessments. Our guidance at the moment is that we will not go down that line unless it's looking likely that an in-person inquiry can take place. At the moment, I'm afraid we're having to rule it out. Things are moving very fast. Accommodation is actually quite difficult to get in that part of the world at the moment, particularly I think since relaxation of COVID requirements. Realistically, I don't think we're going to be able to have an in-person inquiry. I think that the amount of work that would be required to arrange that is going to be too great given that we can't actually do anything about it at the moment, I'm afraid. So if the situation changes radically the closer we get to the inquiry, we will not rule it out, we would consider it, but I think realistically we're looking at a visual inquiry, a virtual inquiry here.
Noted. No, I can't say any more. It'd be nice if we could.
Yeah. I think it's, you know, at least we will all be able to get onto the site, and there might be a bit more we can actually do around that. So I'll come on to discuss that later on. Okay. What I would say though, I mean, it's still a public inquiry in that although the public are not actively participating, the event would be live streamed. All public representations that have been made will be taken into account, and they are available for others to view on the website library. If we're proceeding on the basis of a virtual inquiry, I think we just have to accept that there are some limitations in what we can do. It takes a bit more concentration trying to keep tabs on everything that's happening with a virtual inquiry. So it's likely that we will have slightly shorter days and additional breaks, and probably commence morning sessions at 10 AM and concluding around 4 PM. But we'll discuss this further when we get to item 4. But I think it's only realistic that we plan and steam ahead for a virtual inquiry. Focus our attention on that. All the parties before me have, I'm aware, taken part in virtual proceedings and should be familiar with the technology. If the witnesses that we acting for the Community Council have any difficulty with the technology, perhaps they could contact the case officer in advance. We can arrange for testing and make sure that they have appropriate bandwidth so that they can fully participate.
I don't think that's something you'll have to worry about, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Famous last words in Caithness, but I think that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. With a virtual inquiry, all documentation will be handled electronically, and it would be extremely helpful if we could have memory sticks available for the 3 main parties with all the documentation loaded on in advance. Mr. Trinick.
Yes, ma'am. I understand from Evershares that they're setting up or have set up an extranet site which can be logged into, so documents can be accessed that way. But as a backup facility in case of internet failure, USB sticks will be sent out in advance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell.
Only to say that Miss Kirsty Smith of Eversheds has been extremely accommodating, and I'm most grateful to her for providing me with a copy of all the inquiry documentation up to this point. So I'm well ready to go if when we get started.
That's good and much appreciated from our point of view too. Mr. Finlay, you don't have any issues in that respect? Okay. No. Will anyone require hard copies of any of the visualizations, plans or photographs? Mr. Finlay, no. Okay, thank you. Okay, if we can move on to item 4, which is the provisional timetable, which is under Annex 1. Parties had agreed a start on Monday the 14th of June, and that would be starting with the applicant's evidence on landscape and visual impacts. Could I just come round and ask for the parties' thoughts on the timetable and whether they think now there required to be any adjustments with the change in position from RAWOG to the Community Council? Let's start with Mr. Trinick.
No, I think the timetable is very generous, and I know Mr. Finlay and Mr. Campbell well. I know their style of examination. I think that looks realistic for a day, maybe slipping over into Tuesday and so on through the inquiry. In terms of the West Caithness Community Council, I would guess you're intending to insert their case after the Highland Council and before the policy session. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's fine. Yeah, I think we've got plenty of time in the week. We'll get through it.
Okay. And do you think that we need a full day to do the applicant's landscape and visual evidence?
Not up to me, really. I'm only going to be 40 minutes or so. It's up to the others.
Okay, Mr. Finlay.
Well, no, I think the timing is generous. I would imagine we'd be well through the applicant's evidence on day one, and there's an outside chance we may have finished the Highland Council's evidence on day one. We should definitely finish. I would be very surprised if we hadn't finished both by lunchtime on day two. And in terms of the remainder of the week, I think the parties are, certainly the primary witnesses, are fairly well tuned to the differences on policy. I'd have thought there was no reason why policy and conditions couldn't be dealt with in the same day with relative ease. I understand that considerable progress has been made on conditions in narrowing the differences anyway, obviously subject to your and Mr. Jackman's approval, but that also supports my view that that should be capable of being dealt with within a day. So subject to those points, and I don't, as Mr. Trinick says, Mr. Campbell and Mr. Trinick's style of submission are well known to all parties, so I don't imagine that it's going to add significantly to any of the timings I've given.
Thanks very much. Mr. Campbell, do you think that you would be able to fit in within that time frame and the landscape and visual evidence of the Community Council handled within the first 2 days?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I think if you were, I think I said this in an email to your office, but the Community Council's landscape case could certainly be fitted in on a Tuesday. And the participation in the policy hearing on the Wednesday. And like Mr. Finlay, I would be enthusiastic for consolidating Wednesday and Thursday's planned content so that the conditions are dealt with also on Thursday. That would let people get away.
On Wednesday, sorry, on Wednesday.
Partner Wednesday, sorry.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, that seems to reflect the thinking of myself and Mr. Jackman. We feel that we've built in quite a bit of flexibility here, and that if we can aim for a 3-day inquiry, that would be extremely helpful. There's still, I think, sufficient time for people to have breaks within the 3 days, and I think we've got adequate time to cover everything. So if we will consider issuing an amended timetable covering the Monday the 14th to the Wednesday the 16th of June. Okay. Moving on, we're getting through things quite swiftly, thank you. The submission deadlines, the inquiry statements had been due on the Monday the 19th of April, and we had agreed a revised date would be appropriate, initially with the intention that there's adequate disclosure of the details of each party's case up front, and also now with the Community Council coming on board to give them time to state their case. So just like now to seek the parties' views on what might be an appropriate timing for the inquiry statement on that topic. Mr. Trinick, do you have any thoughts?
I probably need to go second or third on this. I think we need to hear from Highland Council first.
Council first, okay. Mr. Finlay.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Wimble's been able to undertake his site visit, and our inquiry statement should be ready to go on Monday. The statement of agreed matters on the visual material, leaving aside any input from the Community Council, should be, one would hope, be available to be ready a week thereafter. And then that would leave core documents on the 10th of May, which would include any reports from the landscape witnesses and precognitions on the 24th of May as per your timetable. So my suggestion, certainly our statement would be ready for exchange on Monday, and then the statement of agreed matters, I'd suggest a week following that, just because there's a bit more toing and froing to be done on that at this stage.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, I'll come to you next then, just obviously to get an idea of what you think your appropriate timeframes might be.
I think it's quite reasonable to expect us to produce an inquiry statement within 7 days of today. And I could line up with the council and produce an inquiry report for the landscape and visual session by the 10th of May, alongside a hearing statement on the same day. So that, except for the first item, that's to say the inquiry statements, I would fit in with your proposed timetable.
And would the statement of agreed matters also involve the community council, or is that something that's just between the applicant and the Highland Council?
I think it depends on the ambition of those trying to reach agreement. I'd be very happy to see a draft, and if possible, agree it. But I don't know what's in it, so I really can't indicate further at the moment.
We're happy to share the policy, well, the non-landscape and visual one immediately. It'll be sent out to Mr. Campbell this afternoon for his thoughts. In terms of the landscape and visual one, I think probably after we receive the Highland Council's version. Coming on to that, I just asked Mr. Finlay, through you, ma'am, if it's possible to accelerate the scope of case content. Well, no, let's backtrack. The inquiry statement, if that's going to arrive on the 26th, that will define the scope of your case. The remainder of the statement of agreed matters will deal with things like, are the visualizations accurate? Is the methodology appropriate? I imagine that's the case. If that's the case, then we could share the document. Well, the inquiry statement will be shared anyway on the 26th, which is what Mr. Campbell wants, I suspect.
Okay, and the statement of agreed matters on landscape and visual, would you see that extending to the community council?
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to share anything with the community council, but that won't be ready, the remainder of it, until the 26th.
I'm quite happy to participate in the process of agreement as far as I can. And I don't want to hold up the process of an agreement between the council and the applicant. I always approach matters of this kind when acting for third parties with some diffidence, because it's the applicant who has to comply and it's the council who has to enforce. It's not the community which has to do either of those things. So one would just simply look for anything that is completely unacceptable in order to raise an argument. But if it can be agreed, then I can certainly do that.
Okay, right. Can we just go back over this timetable just to make sure that I've got everything clear? So the inquiry statements, Monday the 26th of April, is that what we're saying?
I need longer than that, I think.
You need the Friday of next week.
I need the Friday.
Ma'am, it may be sensible to have the applicants and the council producing theirs on the 26th, because that will, as Mr. Trilling indicated, enable us to make headway with the statement of agreed matters.
Okay.
And can I say that in agreement with Mr. Trilling, I'm very happy that Mr. Campbell and his clients be involved, but the deadline for agreement providing one view should not be subject to his clients being involved, primarily because I think he's indicated he doesn't have a professional witness for landscape and visual, and it's primarily that part will primarily record agreements between the professional witnesses. So it's no disrespect to him or his clients, but I just, as a matter of assistance to you, it's more likely to be the sooner you get that, the better. And that would be, I don't have the date in front of me, but I was going to suggest a week after the 26th.
That's the 3rd of June.
3rd of May.
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
3rd of May, I beg your pardon.
3rd of May. Okay. And the conditions, will they be available next Monday?
Yes, ma'am, there's been very good progress tying down differences, trying to eliminate them. That'll be ready next Monday.
Okay, and will that take into account the comments from RSPB and the further written submissions?
Yes, it doesn't mean that their requirements will be accommodated. It means we will take them into account.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And Mr. Finlay, you're okay with that deadline, the conditions on the Monday the 26th coming? Next week's going to be a busy week.
Yeah, I believe as I indicated, I'm aware that good progress has been made with conditions. So the state of play that has been reached should be capable of being presented to you on Monday.
Okay, thank you. So all of the other timeframes wouldn't alter with the Community Council coming on board. Hearing statements would be Monday the 10th of May, core documents Monday the 10th of May, and recognitions Monday the 24th. So what our preference would be for the memory sticks to be available after the recognitions have been submitted, so that those are also logged on to them. Do you have any thinkings about when those might be available, Mr. Trinick?
The memory sticks, I think, will be available, and I'll ask Kirsty Smith to come in and hit me over the head now if I get it wrong, but should be available on the 10th of May, because after all, you can add more documents on your own system into the memory stick after it's arrived.
Sorry, I think having spoken to other reporters who've used memory sticks recently, I think the feeling was that it's probably better to have them slightly later, so that there's no risk that people are working to different memory sticks and different versions of documents being available. So I was kind of thinking perhaps the week that the recognitions due sometime later on that week, around about 26th to 28th of May. Would that sound suitable?
If that's the reporter's requirement, then that will accommodate that. But I have a feeling that the memory sticks will go out to other parties well before that, because actually once you've got them, you can add other documents into the file.
Sure. We're just trying to minimise the work for our own case officers at this end. It's obviously it's extremely busy, people working from home, etc. So yeah, we would rather have them slightly later if that was okay. Yeah. So I just need to stress the need for punctuality. I think I'd mentioned at the initial pre-inquiry meeting that I will be on leave for, luckily I'm getting free to travel, so I'll be away for a week from the 14th of May. So if everything runs in order, then that shouldn't be an issue at all. Does anyone have anything else to raise on the submission dates?
Just one point, ma'am. I'm just slightly confused on one point, probably because I wasn't listening. Mr. Campbell said at the very start that the scope of his case would be the landscape and visual session, but we've then heard that he'd be submitting documents into the hearing session as well. I just want to get clear, is that to do with conditions or policy for the hearing session?
Sorry, it was policy, Mr. Campbell, is that correct?
I don't anticipate submitting any document beyond a hearing statement, because I've already had a look, thanks to Ms. Kirsty Smith, I've already had a look at the draft document list, and I don't see anything that I would want to add on policy issues. So
I think, was it, Mr. Trinick, was your question that it was only the policy hearing that the Community Council wished to participate in, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm hearing two different things. At the beginning, I heard that the Community Council would participate in only the landscape and visual session. But I've then heard, and I'm not complaining, that there will be a hearing statement submitted. That hearing statement could only be to do with policy or conditions and not landscape and visual effects. So I just want to be clear what the position is.
I'm sure it's my fault. I'm sure it's my fault. The Community Council wishes to participate with a witness in the landscape and visual inquiry session. It also wishes to participate with a witness in the hearing, in the policy hearing session. For each of those, the inquiry session and the hearing statement, it will submit in the first place an inquiry report. I doubt there will be any additional documents. And for the second of those, it will submit a hearing statement on behalf of the Community Council. And I doubt there will be any additional documents.
And recognitions will be submitted on behalf of the Community Council?
Yes, for the inquiry statement only, for the inquiry session only.
Okay. Mr. Trinick, is that okay with yourself?
Now clear, thank you.
Mr. Finlay, anything to add? Okay. Moving on to item 6, site inspection arrangements. This is also covered by the most recent EPA guidance. The means and the timing will be dependent on the COVID-19 restrictions, but we're quite keen to make the site inspection quickly after the inquiry. We're thinking perhaps late June, early July. Because of COVID restrictions, it's unlikely that there will be much change in how we operate. Myself and Mr. Jackman will have to travel separately. We won't be sharing a vehicle, and as much as possible of the site inspections will have to be done on an unaccompanied basis. However, we did talk in the first pre-examination meeting about whether or not there was the requirement to do some accompanied site inspections, perhaps to the areas of wildland. Just really looking for parties' thoughts on how they consider it would be appropriate to undertake the site inspections, which particular locations they think we can do accompanied or unaccompanied, and the means by which we can do it safely. Let's start with Mr. Trinick.
I think, ma'am, if you're not, well, aside from the wildland, you can do it unaccompanied. I don't see any point in being accompanied. They're all public viewpoints, publicly accessible viewpoints. If you want to go onto the site itself, it might pay to be accompanied, I think, partly because construction works have started on the Limekiln consented project, although they will have ceased by the time your site visit takes place. Well, I think they have ceased, but they won't have restarted by then. So it won't be a construction site. Nevertheless, I think you would benefit from being accompanied with someone acting as a signpost to what is happening. To the extent I need to know, perhaps it's too early to ask from Mr. Campbell, if he has an interest in wildland. Clearly Nature Scott do not, clearly the Highland Council do not, but RAWOG were going to have an interest, and hence the need to visit wildland. That need may have disappeared or it may not. So that's over to Mr. Campbell. So, but aside from wildland, unaccompanied except for the site itself.
Could I just check that my understanding is that the site access is now in or nearly complete? Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct. And there were some watercourse crossings that were required as part of the proposals for Limekiln 2. Have those been completed, or would there be difficulty accessing parts of the site at the moment?
I'll get back to you on that because I don't know.
Okay. Okay, and just before we go on to confuse Mr. Campbell, but can I just check the council still don't have any evidence on wildland? The position's not changed on that. Mr. Finlay, sorry.
No, nothing. We have no view on site visits. There's no need to be accompanied for any of the viewpoints that we're interested in.
Okay.
I'm afraid it's too soon for me to give you a definitive view on behalf of the Community Council, but I'll certainly take clear instructions on both of those matters. That's to say, the accompanied or unaccompanied site inspections and the wildland question. It's better that I don't speculate at the moment.
Okay, we still have plenty of time to sort that out, but obviously with accommodation being quite busy, we're just trying to kind of plan ahead as far as we can. Mr. Trinick, obviously if we do have to have some aspects of the site inspections accompanied, COVID restrictions seem unlikely to relax in terms of being allowed people to travel in the same vehicles. Would that present an issue, or is there means by which we can access certain areas either by convoy or open argo cats or something similar? Do you have any views you can offer on that at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, argo cats are available. They can be supplied by the landowners.
Okay, so if,
That's not a problem, nor is it a problem to access in convoy if that's what you want to do. I don't think there's a need to go in an Argo cap for other reasons on the site itself, but we can make arrangements nearer the time it can be done.
so that Argo cats would only really be if we required to visit site wildland locations.
Yes, and that really would be necessary. And we can supply 2 Argo cats, so we can separate ourselves.
Well, what I'll do is if I could leave it with yourself, Mr. Trinnick, but ask the parties if they would liaise and provide a list to Mr. Trinnick of the viewpoints that they would wish us to visit, both on a if there's a requirement for us to undertake any parts on an accompanied basis, if that could be made clear. And Mr. Trinnick, if you could perhaps take the lead and draw up a list of locations and perhaps provide us with a plan that goes with that, if that's at all possible. And
Yes, so it'll be Kirsty Smith who does it rather than me direct.
okay, thank you. Kirsty, if she's able to consider whether or not, if there's an accompanied part to the site inspections, just to estimate what a suitable itinerary would be, so we know what timeframes are involved. Is it something that can be done in a day, or does it need a bit longer? I think we just need to try and get a rough idea of what we're looking at. Okay, should I or could I ask that Kirsty gets back to the case officer to give her an indication of when she might be able to provide those details?
Of course.
Does anyone else have any points or observations on the site inspections?
No, thank you.
And does anyone under item 7 have any other business they would like to raise with us at this point? No.
No.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for their time this afternoon and bring this meeting to a close. I appreciate everyone being able to meet on a hot Friday afternoon, and we will move ahead, hopefully with no need for any further pre-examination meetings unless situation changes dramatically before the inquiry. And as normal, I'll issue a note of today's meeting with everything that we have agreed within the next 7 days. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks very much.